you can't own the big successes if you can't own the tiny mistakes.
You have to be humble enough to say, I screwed up.
Your social awareness was really, really tested.
And you make the same mistake 3 times, you don't belong here. Sean, we're here on the Leader's Mindset podcast. We always have very, very deep conversations and have always joked about, hey, we need to just record this one time, and more for ourselves really than anybody else. And sometimes these conversations are after a couple bottles of wine, and they get into some really interesting areas. So I'm super excited to actually have a conversation with you recorded here today. And we've known each other since grade 7.
Yep.
Best man at your wedding in California. Very lucky. And yeah, I think we push each other to be better, and we've learned a lot from each other, and appreciate your mindset has really helped me along my life journey, and excited for this conversation today.
Wow, what an open, man. I echo so much of what you're saying. Being around you my entire life has completely shifted my mindset around how to experience things. Of course, business and everything that you've gone through in your own journey, and learning from that to how to apply it to mine. But in the similar vein, you know, where people think you're a product of the 5 people that you hang around the most, you're one of them.
Yep.
One of those core people. And I'm absolutely who I am today because of what we've lived through together. And now you're the uncle to my twins. And that's been such a special journey to see your relationship with them grow and flourish. More so for how I observe you, not even for them, right? And so that's the cool part. But I'm very grateful to be on this platform with you, and to have this recorded, as you mentioned, because often we find ourselves talking about business, about rules, and the fact that there aren't really any, because our world is so plunged in comparison mindsets. But then we talk about culture and how to lead people and how to get things done. And so I'm excited to dive into some of these topics without wine, and kind of rip through all of it. What do you think our experiences together building an event planning company taught you? And does any of it apply and come into your mind of how you handle things today?
Yeah, I think the experience with Fresh Media is one of the biggest reasons why I am where I am today. When we were in university, we worked at TD together as tellers, did economics and finance degrees. I thought I was going to be a banker. I thought I was going to be a Bay Street person. As we graduated from school, I was applying for jobs in Toronto. And my parents had a family business. We owned a couple Harvey's franchises. So I took a leave of absence from TD because my mom got sick, and she's all good now, thankfully, and started to work with my father. And at that time, the brand was in a little bit of trouble, wasn't doing very well. And we got all the local franchisees together and said, hey, let's pool our local dollars and see if we can drive some traffic into our stores. And that was really the moment where the light bulb went off for me. I was like, hey, I just spent the last 3 years of my life driving humans into events and concerts and bars. So why can't I drive people to a fast food restaurant? The theories and the concepts are the same. So that lived experience was really one of the biggest catalysts for me to get into continue the world of entrepreneurship and get into the family business and help grow it. And love to hear if there was any of those moments for you through that experience.
I think one, because of you that happened. I'd never intended on ever being an entrepreneur in any slice of an idea, but I'd seen you for years kind of just talk about it, be about it, exist in that world. So the idea, you're the one that prompted it. But for me, what it taught me was you're plunged into an experience where you have to absorb people's energies and micro expressions and body languages, in a way that is at scale that you can't get that practice anywhere else. When you're doing 3 and 4 events a week, hundreds of people a week that you're experiencing. And for me, what that taught me, we got a lot of practice with observing people in loud music, hearing conversations all over the room. You're talking to one group, you can hear something else going on. Your social awareness was really, really tested. And why that matters so much now is, I mean, I feel like I can walk into rooms, walk into boardrooms, walk into an environment, community event, whatever it is, and I'm just picking up signals from all sorts of different things. I'm hearing conversations, and now it allows me to just navigate those situations a bit more effectively. It allows me to pick up what you said when you're listening to the pattern with one words. I'm watching people's lips and their cues in their face. I'm watching their body language. And if I pick up a cue and I see one more pattern that kind of reiterates that that's happening, I'm usually going to do something about it with that person, whether it's a family, a friend on my team, or even just in a community event. And so the practice was absolutely priceless that we got back then. You also taught me a lot about logistics. You also taught me a lot about, here's the vision, here's the grand idea, here are all the steps that we need to do to get through and execute it this way. Here's your superpower, and this is why you need to do these roles, and then this is mine, and this is why I need to do that. And I think that was something at 19, not many people get the experience of how to see objectives and vision and turn it into results. And we failed a lot, at least our version of what that was against an expectation. But we also succeeded a lot and practiced those things a lot. And so when you go into the workforce after doing that for 4 years, I feel like it gives you a little bit of a one-up on most people.
Oh yeah, and if you want to build something special, you have to fail more times than other people even try.
Right.
Something that you brought forward there with, learning about people and patterns and watching them is the idea of energy matching, right? Yep. So you can't approach, if you're dealing with an employee or a friend or a partner who's in a highly emotional state, you can't approach that conversation from a rational spot because you'll just clash.
Yeah.
Right. And so when somebody's in a highly emotional state, we have to sit in it with them. We have to resonate with them. We have to be there to listen to them. But if we try to approach a highly emotional conversation in a rational state, it just clashes. And the person says, you're not hearing me. You're not listening to me. You don't understand what I'm going through. And it's really hard to get out of that space. And that's why entrepreneurs don't make great partners, because we're always in problem solving mode. So when our partner is coming home hysterical because something terrible happened in their day, and we go into problem solving mode, that's the exact opposite of what that person needs from us in that moment.
Timely, because last week I had done all of our quarterly check-in meetings, and a new thing that I added this quarter was having everyone review the team's disc assessment colors. And this time around, I said, don't focus on the primary color. Don't focus on what they're most dominant in. Look at what they're second most dominant in. So our team is primarily yellows and greens. So extrovert, super socials with more steady people who need to receive and soak in information before they respond, not the quick calculators in those moments, right? So we have a good mix of those different two. But then if you look at the second most dominant trait across all of them, you got super introverted people, super alpha people. So the whole purpose of the exercise was to tell them, whenever you're going through communication blocks, whenever you're going through, we're about to jump into this whole year of cross-department collaboration for a bunch of the initiatives that we need to execute. So what I want you to think about is, whenever you're trying to do this project and you find that this individual or this department, you're finding there's blocks with how things are working, look at the second most dominant trait on their DISC assessment. And why I say that is, do they need you to pick up the phone and call? Do they need a WebEx or a Messenger? Do they need a long email to absorb the information? Or do they need an in-person meeting to just quickly chat through something? That matters so much in in matching energy, like you're saying. It matters so much in how to get things done with different types of people, how to deliver messages with different audiences. And so you hit that bang on, man. Like energy matching is something, I mean, I don't know how you teach that to a lot of people. You just got to coach it, I think.
And I think in the world of work from home, it's really tough. And, you know, Crafty Ramen being a startup and our office team is fully remote, the really difficult points are so much harder because you're isolated.
Yeah.
So you're going through this extremely hard time, this big cash crunch. You know, how do we make it out on the other side? But you're sitting at home alone. You have no energy to feed off.
Mm-hmm.
You have a team of people,
Yeah.
but you can't feel them in that moment. Where
Yeah.
if you're together in a space and you're working through something that's so difficult, you have that energy of everybody around you working towards a common goal. And I think it's really difficult to build a startup in a virtual environment. And lots of tech companies and lots of people are doing it today. But for me, it's lonely and isolating and very, very difficult. And I can't even imagine, and I'm the leader. So
Yeah.
what is it like? And leadership is a lonely journey because there's only one person at the top, and the conversations you have are with your boss. So
Yeah.
it's hard to have resonate with your team.
Mm-hmm.
So what is it like for the rest of the people who are sitting at home alone when we're going through a really tough time in a startup environment?
Work from home during COVID worried me a lot. It didn't worry me like in how I would interact with society, but certainly people who were more spectruming on the introverted side of things, who had more community at home than they did or felt at the workplace. And this often happens with newer employees, I would say, versus the ones who had already been on the team prior to COVID and had experience with those people. Their community is already established in person. So when you go home, you already have these relationships, right? But the new employees, when you bring them on, it's very hard, I think, to get them tied in.
And I think the biggest reason for that is we had a lot of different areas before this, you know, really push towards virtual work environments to get community,
Mm-hmm.
right? 20 years ago, you would have barbecues with your neighbors, and you would, you know, a lot of people were going to church and getting community from religion, getting community from their neighbors. You know, they have friends and family, and now we're really trying to get almost all of that out of work.
Yeah.
We want work to fulfill all these different levels of community. It's not the space for it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I think it's a really hard thing to do to build a culture at the workplace that dances across the line of family, colleagues, and purpose successfully.
I think the idea of creating a culture of family at work, we're family, we're a family.
Yeah.
I think that's bullshit.
Interesting.
No, you're a sports team. We have a quarterback, we have a linebacker, we have a wide
Yeah.
receiver. Everybody has a role.
Yeah.
And you need to perform at a certain level to stay in that role. Families look after each other no matter what.
Yeah.
So that idea of family to me is ridiculous in the workspace, right? Because if you have a brother that's going through something and is not performing, you're going to be there for them.
Right.
If you have an employee or a colleague that's not performing, bringing the whole team down and is not aligned on the culture and values and all the things we just talked about, they don't belong there. It's not a family.
I love this one because one of our values ties into our team being a family. I actually use the word team member on purpose, family member on purpose. I never use the word staff or employee. Jay's been a huge driver behind that mindset for me and just even how we talk on a day-to-day basis. And when we coach any of our team members in our business, what I find the coaching talks about is it dives into the what's going on in your life. It dives into how can I be there for you, support you more. But I absolutely agree with, having a really good performance culture. It allows for the breakage effectively, which is if you're not performing at some point, you can only be family for so long, right? You can only be compassionate for so long. But if your operating principles are getting broken left, right, and center, you have to do something about it. I think for us, we really do try and drive that idea of if you're going through something, we'll be there for you. if you're going through something and you need help, let me help you get the help, the resources, the refocus of the organization to support the thing you're working on.
Well, and you would do that on a sports team too, right? So I'm not saying to pull all the humility and humble out of the workforce.
Yeah.
I'm saying the framing it as a family environment, in my opinion, is not the right way to show up.
I understand your perspective is what I'm saying, because I also am very convicted in how we I think the business is different too.
Of course.
It depends on what space you're in, how established that industry and or business it is that you're in, what your goals are for that quarter. I mean, when we've talked and how you run in equivalents of sprints of sorts, right, to get your bigger projects and tasks done.
One of our core values is hospitality, right? And being hospitable with each other is almost more important than being hospitable with the guests. Because if we look after each other and we care about each other and we care about our team, they're naturally going to give a shit about our customers, right?
Yeah.
And they're going to put out a way better level of hospitality than if the behind the curtain, it's not a great environment and we don't treat each other with hospitality. So there's a balance between that. For me, I always get caught up on that. Like, we're not family. We're not. We're colleagues. We're friends. We work together, but it's a very different line. But I regress.
No. I have a big one for us on this topic, and specifically tied to the sports team analogy. Timeless mental models versus seasonal mental models. I firmly believe that for the economic environment, the season of your business, the structure and makeup of your team, there are timeless mental models that you can apply and seasonal mental models that you can apply. But as leaders, we have to be open to changing some of those models as the economy changes, as your business evolves, and as your team structure changes, right? What I find the hardest thing to do, though, is really understanding which mental models are timeless and which ones are seasonal, and constantly going back and forth. Like, the ones that I used yesterday may not apply to what's happening in front of me now.
Yeah, I think this is a great segue into there is no skill called business. You go to business school, but to your point, business is really game theory. What game are you playing? Are you playing a positive sum game, a zero sum game? It's psychology, right? So in your team environment, in your customer environment, your pricing on your menu is routed in psychology. Your marketing is routed in psychology. It's accounting. If you don't understand the basics of accounting, you can't run a good business. It's math. If you don't have basic arithmetic, it's very, very difficult to operate a business. So really understanding the basics of all the major buckets that are very separate in the schooling system. And we can get into the future of schooling in a minute, but just being pigeonholed into one area of, say, business, well, you're missing huge parts of what is required to be a successful business owner or entrepreneur.
So then how do you expose yourself to other schools of thought and mental models to help you be creative or to help you process through changing times in your business, changing times in the world, changing times in what you need to think about now to be prepared for the future?
Conversations like these.
Yeah.
And just not being stubborn, if you will, right? Because something worked, like you said, a year ago, a month ago, or 2 years ago, it doesn't mean it's going to work tomorrow, right? So you have to constantly be adaptable, moving, changing, shaking. You have to be willing to change your mind. And I think in today's environment, it's really that people get into a very specific mindset. And algorithms are a big reason for that, right? You start to get into a certain level of algorithm. That algorithm is going to continue to feed this bias into your mind of like, yeah, that's the right train of thought. There is no right train of thought. You have to constantly be able to move and shake and change the way you think. And the biggest part of that is humility, right? You have to be humble enough to say, I screwed up. And we, in our businesses, we really try to create a culture where it's okay to make a mistake as long as you're learning from it.
Yeah.
If you made a mistake and you make the same mistake 3 times, you don't belong here.
Right.
You're not learning, right? You don't have a learning mindset. Or if you get feedback and you take it as I failed, you don't have a learning mindset.
Yeah.
Right? If you get feedback and said, oh, wow, what can I learn from this? What can I take out of this? You will continue to grow and grow and grow as a human. But when you pigeonhole yourself into a certain headspace or mindset, you might as well just stay where you are forever.
Yeah, it's there's so much there. I feel like owning mistakes and working with a culture like you just spoke to around making mistakes quickly, cheaply, learning from, like, it's absolutely inexcusable not to learn from the mistake. Those philosophies, I mean, have come in and seeped into everything we do on our team as well, and it likely because of conversations with you and throughout the years, caring about Kaizen or continuous improvement, caring about accountability and deep ownership. One thing that has been challenging, but I think really important, and I've seen so much growth in it, is helping the team own and communicate roadblocks, blockers, or quote unquote failures in front of our entire team, for the bigger picture and purpose of the entire team learning from it, the entire team viewing that person with integrity and respect because they're able to own something. Because you can't own the big successes if you can't own the tiny mistakes, the tiny failures.
Yep.
And so you need to do all of it. You need
Yeah.
to, and so that's been a challenging thing because not everyone's wired that way, especially introverted people or more introverted people, to do those kind of things. And so that's been something that I feel has helped us execute, let's call it this strategy or ethos on our team, is really not only just learning and doing mistakes cheaply, quickly, and learning from them, but also owning it in front of the entire team.
Yeah, we bring that to life in our year-end strategy session or our year kickoff session, and what starts with me. Everybody has to put up 2 mistakes they made on the presentation screen.
Love it.
In front of the whole leadership team. And what did you learn out of it? Because it's one thing to say you have values and say you have a philosophy. It's another thing to actually bring them to life in the organization. Mm-hmm. And then when you start to create a really tight culture around the way you do anything is the way you do everything, and some of these, points that we're talking about, people just, it's obvious when they don't fit, and they should go work somewhere else because this is not the environment for you.
So talk to me about your process individually and your process for a team on how to get things done.
So the lack of accountability is the number one death of businesses. So if you don't have a really great structure of accountability, then people are just running wild. They can take advantage. We're all human. We're all lazy by nature. We don't really want to work hard. If you have some purpose or alignment, it helps. So there's different levels of structure we put throughout the organization to make this happen, but really just sharing as much publicly as possible. I am not a big fan of one-on-one conversations if there's a project where multiple people are involved.
Understood.
So taking this offline idea, we'll take this offline, we'll chat about this. Well, why? It impacts all of us in this conversation.
Yeah.
Share it in this room right now. And the idea of blockers, as you said, say, hey, I'm almost done building this plant, but I'm missing the green dye from Rishan. And you say that publicly, now Rishan's got to make sure he gets that done.
Right.
Right. And the idea, we review our task list as a leadership team publicly together every single morning.
Yeah.
We all know exactly where we are at along our separate journeys of getting stuff done. Mm-hmm. Is one way to do it. And it's super important in a virtual world because it's harder to check in. But the way my brain works is if I asked you to do something, whether we wrote it down or not, I'm going to follow up and follow up and follow up until it's done. So it's that idea of you just have to continuously follow up. And the ones you don't have to follow up with, those are your stars.
Something that you and I have talked about a lot, I think over the last 5 years specifically, coaching with the team, communicating with context. I think this is the place of how to get things done mentality that goes right for a lot of leaders and equally goes really, really wrong. And then it moves into Einstein's definition of insanity, of trying the same thing, expecting different results.
Yeah.
So I want to get your learning lessons and what you feel like you've grown to be today when it comes to communicating with context as a leader and getting your team to work on and build things and do things.
Yeah, so I think for let's define communicating with context. Contextual communication is really just everybody knows what you're talking about when you say something or when you put something out, right? So at its very, very basic form, I'm sure if you look up the definition, you're going to get a lot more out of it. But it's really, people know what you're saying.
Yeah.
So you showed me this chart on communicating with context, I think 3 or 4 years ago, that you presented to your team. And for me, that was a light bulb moment. I was like, oh my God, this is such an easy way to break it down. And really it's when you're updating somebody, or how I took it and how we applied it is when you're updating somebody on what you're working on, there's a ranking system. So I'm working on making this plant and I'm a 5 out of 10. And to take that one step further, well, how long is it going to take you? What's your pace? So I'm going to be done by Friday. And then that one step further is, do I have everything I need, or do I need something from somebody else? Or ops blockers. Is there a blocker in there? No, I'm good and I'm going to get it done by Friday. Or no, I need something from Rishan here. And the change management in getting the team to operate like that takes time and a lot of patience and a lot of reminding. And when you can start with a smaller group, and then this is how our daily stand-ups now operate. So when we have our stand-up every morning and everybody's updating on what they're working on, they have to speak in that. But what's really cool about that tool is if you use it effectively, in 2 minutes, everybody knows exactly what you're working on, where you're at, and what you need from each other. And it's super efficient. I spend a lot of my day trying to pull context out of people. So that I get a note or a message or an email, and I'm like, and I just now do a 1-word reply saying context, which means I don't understand. I don't understand what you're asking or what you're telling, and I need more information.
Yeah. I love it. Where that diagram came from was when I was a product manager. I had a CTO at a company who pulled me in to help run these sprints. We had a scrum master who would effectively do the quick ask for it's set up such that everyone in the room knows how to communicate with context on their ticket, on their task, on their kind of chunk of work for that 2 weeks. And every day you do the daily stand-up to talk about it, right? And I remember being someone who had never operated in this type of environment, observing how effective this was at moving the needle forward towards a bigger objective. Because in those worlds, you write a requirement stock, and out of the requirement, so big objective and what you're trying to achieve, and then you have tickets tied to it that kind of show momentum towards this bigger picture. That was beautiful.
One of our core values is vulnerability, and vulnerability fits really well with communicating with context and communicating at a very high level.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of individuals who come into the organization that see vulnerability as a weakness, and we see it as a strength.
Yep.
And reaching out and saying, I got assigned this. I don't know how to do it, but this is where I think I should start. For us, that's a strength.
Yeah.
We have deep respect in the individuals who are able to share that level of vulnerability versus the ones who think of it as a weakness, don't share that, go away, do it wrong, and don't ask for help, and then don't have that next level ability to say, oh, what did I learn from this mistake? And when you start, like we said, we were talking about before, when you build these types of cultures, it's really easy to see who fits and who doesn't fit.
Yeah. I think, and this is an interesting one around building that culture and the iterative daily changes, the strategic changes that you're doing more at a higher level and bleeding it down into everything that you have to do. It's a labor of love, change management. It's a labor of love, building and maintaining a culture. It's a labor of love, developing operating principles that everyone is behind and bought into and reminded about constantly. I think as leaders, something we have to do all the time is be really good reminders at what these operating principles are, lacing it into our language, creating ceremonies that require us to go through that principle again and use it often. But it does bring up an interesting topic around this is our state now, our age, our generation, and what we're going through in our lived experiences now. I'm really worried about, the next generation and how they'll get things done. Worried from a people social EQ perspective, people smart perspective, collaboration, communication. But also it's probably going to be a completely different game. So, how do you think about, for me, it's my daughters. So how am I going to help them be ready for the things that don't exist yet? Right? So how do you think about that?
As you were teeing that up, one of my reflections was I often say that I believe we grew up in probably the best generation ever, because we got to experience childhood and high school with no technology, without the internet, without social media, without any of that stuff. So we got to live like our childhood in pure human to human connection. And then we got to experience technology on the come up, and we were able to learn it from scratch. So we were able to grasp technology very quick, and we got to have that growing up of human to human connection. And when you were talking about work from home earlier, I fear that we're losing this connection. And I think the highest level of purpose for humans is that of creativity. Building, creating, art, design. And we think of creativity as art a lot, but it's not. It's you have a project that you need to do at work, and how are you going to bring this to life? So there's tons of creative aspects in that. And I think this new world of AI, as it gets deeper and deeper and better, will remove all of the stuff that we don't like to do as humans. It'll take away all those mundane tasks. We all don't like doing research. I'm rebuilding our pitch deck for the 50th time at Crafty Ramen over the last few weeks. And a big component of it is research. We need to show that our investors that there's a market here and there's a trend here. I can do that research in minutes now.
Yeah.
Whereas it took hours. And sorry to any profs that might be listening, like most people don't like doing research.
Yeah,
it's boring, right? To then the outcome is great. Oh, there's a nugget here that I can use and I can prove my point with it. So a lot of these mundane tasks go away with AI, and we'll be left, in my opinion, to do our highest purpose level of work, which is to be creative as humans. So I think you see it as a worry. I see it as maybe this will take us to a place of happiness, and we can get into what happiness means after.
You're right. I worry. What I worry about is how my daughters are going to communicate and collaborate and absorb things the way I did socially in life. Because I think one of my superpowers, through now me reflecting a lot on it, but then also what people have told me my entire life, is just like people skills. I've always just heard that word. But to me, like how I use and apply and develop and constantly work those things on a day-to-day basis, it's something I'm not always needing to read about. It's just, it happens as I organically go through it. How do my daughters get that, right? Because if everything is scaled through things like AI, if all the mundane tasks are done and you have access to information, who guarantees that my daughters are able to get the interactions that we got at those high school keggers for prom, to be able to walk around to different cliques of people in high school and be sociable with all of them? Everyone had currency. Everyone was walking around and they were likable, and you just did that. It wasn't something that some people don't have that. They don't have the ability to go around and socialize. I want that for my daughters. I want to empower them and give them the tools to do that. But is the system going to be the same?
Well, you brought up a really good nugget there with schooling, right? So high school learning stuff is like 1/3, 1/4 of the purpose. Another quarter is babysitting, right? Parents need to go to work. You can't have 13-year-old boys running around the streets. They're going to cause a ruckus, right?
Yeah.
So part of it's babysitting. Part of it is learning how to be social. Part of it is connection. So like the real education portion of high school is only one small part of it.
Yeah, fair.
And yeah, where does higher education go? 100 years ago, there are very, very important institutions. That's where all information was held. You needed these deep libraries. You needed all these textbooks, all that information. That was the place to go. That's where research happened. That's where learning happened. Now it's all available at your fingertips. So if you want to learn anything, you want to learn a new skill set, you want to do something different, you can do that at home in a few hours or a few days, depending on what you're trying to learn. So do you need the traditional form of universities? And sorry to my friends at Lang and and the Wood Center here as we talk through this topic, but I would say no. Why do I need to go and spend $30,000-$40,000 at a university if I can get a lot of these skill sets for $20-$30 subscriptions at home if you have the willingness to learn?
And this is going to be a fundamental paradigm shift, I think, in higher education, is teaching people, if all these tools are now, like, and we're talking over 10 years, right? Not just in the next year or so, but I'm sure all these institutions have to start thinking about this strategically now. Being able to embrace these new technologies as they come in to drive more efficient and better outcomes when it comes to research, when it comes to a high school or a university project. It should be in the what done looks like to use various technologies to automate everything. You know, when you're, hey, I need you to build an email marketing campaign, right? I need you to use Zapier to create automated tasks, link into ChatGPT, link into your Gmail, have it sent from your Gmail, BCC XYZ, and I need you to do this all with a free account, which means you have limited tasks that you have to do this within, limited amount of tests that you can do before it's operational. And that's the project. It requires you to use that, right?
Yeah, fighting technology has never worked, right?
No.
Municipals, governments across the world try to fight Uber. They still do today. Calculator is going to take everybody's job and it's going to make us all dumb.
Yeah.
And now there's this idea of this friction point between AI and plagiarism. And I think it's important to, as you're saying, you have to embrace it. It's not going anywhere. And we have to fundamentally shift the way we think. And I think the institutions just move way slower than technology can, right? So it's this idea of adapting, and we have these plagiarizing tools that we're putting this information through, but it's not realistic to how we want the world to operate outside of school.
Right.
I want you to get your task done as quickly and as efficiently as possible with what done looks like using whatever tools you want to use.
Yeah.
Right. So the idea of, I remember I had a stats class that was like, you couldn't use a formula sheet. You had to memorize all the formulas. What a ridiculous way
in what world?
What a ridiculous way to operate. Right? That would never happen in the real world. So why do we make that happen? Is there something that I'm missing here?
How do we teach the next generation how to critically think? What do we do?
If we're left to only do the creative tasks, isn't that all we do is think critically?
You know, it's interesting. I saw this thing saying, I read something saying, you know, humans are naturally wired to explore, right? So when you talk about creativity, imagine who we were eons ago. We would see the sun go down, up and down on the horizon, and your natural wiring is to see what's beyond the horizon. Your natural mindset is to say, where's the sun coming from? Right? Where's it going when it sets? And, you know, creativity has been at the core of everything that humans are and do, right? It will be an interesting world if everything is so systemized and automated that the only thing you're left to do or need to do to be successful is like maybe we tune our critical thinking better, because all these mundane tasks are switched into AI and automation. something I was seeing as a trend leaving the accounting firms is they were investing in all these tools to do the auditing by a machine, right?
Exactly.
Auditing by the technology, such that the new staff accountants that would come in, the new recruits, they were given more complex things to work on that required using more of their brain versus the reporting, number crunching, the manual, kind of task labor. And so it'll be interesting to see this all unfold.
So let's go into a future outcome. So what does success mean to you?
I know you asked me not to do this, but when I said arriving as my one word open, it's because they've been so lost for so long. I think having children, what that challenges in your relationship in terms of your partnership with Leanne, and how we've navigated two girls, same age, how that's forced conversations with our reflections with how we are at the workplace. So the challenges there with your own mental and physical health. And then learning how to be happy and grateful and all these things like throughout these challenges when you're not sleeping and so on and so forth. And so success to me at one point in time was, of course, finance, banking, money, business, and in some degrees, those things all still provide choices. So I think there's a level of that drives what I feel is success. But for me now, it's about, am I happy with myself? And there's so many legs to that table, right? Physically. And so the way I drive momentum on that, because it isn't, I think success actually, there is no state of like successful and you arrive there. It's a destination, you get there. For me, it's building a system that allows me to expand and grow in my relationship with Leanne, in my capacity as a father, in my capacity as a leader on our team, in my relationships with my friends, in my relationship with my parents as a son. And then, nope, those are the main ones. And I look at that every Monday and I ask those 5 questions, like, how can I be a better friend? How can I be a better son? How can I be a better father? How can I be a better partner? And when you spend an hour every Monday reflecting and answering those questions, and it gives you things, I write them down and then I look at them every day. And usually by the end of the week, I've done something about that answer. There was a time it was all anxious, all problems, things I needed to solve, like, rifts I had with friends that I didn't close it. I didn't solve that thing. I didn't fix it. So that was a really hard process at one point. But now it's few and far between. So as an example, your birthday's coming up in April. That'll float into my reflections, into my Monday journaling in the next several weeks, because I don't want to do it a day or a week before that happens. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so success for me is driving momentum on all those questions.
Okay. So there is no destination for your definition of success. It's only a journey.
Today. Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, it's freedom. And for me, the definition of success is freedom. So, you started with finance. Money only solves money problems.
Right.
The idea that I can wake up and work on what I want, when I want, how I want, and not to have to go to an individual place or to be stuck in a 12-hour workday. That for me is the definition of success. And tying it back to the AI conversation, is I think the level of technology that we're seeing being thrusted upon us will help a lot of people achieve freedom. I think you're going to see more, and the gig economy is going to continue to grow and grow and grow and grow. Because if you have a certain skill set, I can then, I want to go work for this company in a gig form for the next little bit. And then I'm going to take a pause and I'm going to work on this and then I'm going to do that. So I think the future is very few extremely large organizations with thousands and thousands of employees.
Yep.
And it will all disseminate down into individual contractors working when they want. And in that environment, guess what? You get the most efficient outcomes.
Yeah, I just listened to an interview speaking to what the CEOs of the future are going to have to navigate from a workforce perspective. And this will probably be the last generation of CEOs that have primarily humans as the workforce.
Yes.
The next generation of CEOs are going to have virtual assistants. They're going to have a lot more AI integrated, but somebody managing multiple systems that are doing work. And then there'll be humans obviously involved. But it's a really interesting concept to see where that shift is going. Success for you, that definition, has it stayed the same or has it changed?
Oh, it has definitely changed, right? And before it was the things, right?
Yeah.
Building, creating, getting more. And there's that inflection point where I was like, well, what is this more mentality really doing for us today? It's cool, it's fun, but it's wrapped in that mentality is wrapped in ego.
Right.
And the idea of success is not having 10 restaurants and 100 employees. It's being able to do whatever I want on a Tuesday at 2:00. Whether that's working out, whether that's working on a problem, whether that's building something or playing golf. Right? To me, that's the ultimate form of success. And isn't that what we want as humans, to do whatever the hell we want, whenever we want?
So I'll speak to a system I just listened to the other day. Tropical country, really, really nice, beautiful, home. And it was a net zero home. They had a waterfall that was close by that they used to generate electricity. So they created a system to build the energy. And then it powered servers in the basement of this home that mined Bitcoin and then created enough revenue to pay for the mortgage of the house. So you don't have to work to live in that home. When you think of the affordability crisis in North America, but let's just say globally, when you think of the cost to build a system like that runs itself effectively, that then pays for the home, the models that we're going to see that create freedom for people, I think, and that is one tiny example, into the future, I think it's becoming too big to ignore. And so, I mean, doesn't it all just then come back down to, do you love what you're doing? Right? You want freedom, right? You want success, whatever you kind of define it as. I think as long as we're wired or oriented enough to be doing the thing that we feel is our superpower, and leveraging it for the best income outcome, the best satisfaction, purpose outcome, so on and so forth, and you're moving towards that, let's call it, state of freedom in some instances, or for others, choices, I think those end up becoming what people focus on. I think it's really hard for people to say my success outcome is freedom, and then they have a life that doesn't allow them to make the choices to create the foundation and set up that kind of future, or they just want to stay ignorant and not do anything to create that future. And I think that's where intentions come in. I think a lot of people want things. They say they want these things, but not willing to do the things that it takes before the day starts, after the day ends, because all the excuses in the world of what is going on in their life. And I think for me, that if there's one takeaway from my own life experience, is that I constantly feel like I'm growing and expanding because I do the work every single day to try and move the needle on a variety of things. And I just think if you're not someone that does that, you can't expect.
Well, you can't just choose the outcome.
No,
you have to
thank you.
You have to choose the steps that it takes to get there.
Yeah.
Right. So if you want to be a bodybuilder,
Yeah.
you have to choose the boring meals and the calorie
Yeah.
counting and the, gymming however many times a week,
Right.
right? You can't just choose the destination.
Right.
And I think that's a societal trap today, right?
Yep.
We want the outcome, but we don't want to do the journey that it takes to get to that destination.
Yeah. Switching gears for a sec, what's one of the hardest truths that you've had to experience, endure, or that you've reflected on over the last, like, our relationship, let's call it 20 years? What's one of the hardest things that you've come to realize that's just a truth?
There's a lot of pain in being an entrepreneur. And when you first start and you catch a little bit of success, you don't necessarily see that pain, but the real growth comes from the really dark moments.
Wow. Do you find that your resilience for accepting and living with that truth is high?
No, not yet. Maybe one day. But the really tough moments, life is about how you react to what happens to you, not about what happens to you.
Charles Swindoll, yeah.
Yeah, and like there's a whole bunch of different quotes on that. The reactions in the really painful moments are not my best self yet.
Yeah, it's for sure. Especially as an entrepreneur, though, I feel like there's a whole other layer of what you deal with in your day to day as an entrepreneur with that topic. That, when you see, I think you had mentioned it was the NVIDIA CEO that kind of spoke to, his journey of pain leading up to, what we're seeing today. And it must be hard. What keeps you going? What keeps you going through the pain?
That's a good question, and it depends on the context of what is painful at that time.
Fair.
I'm a builder. I love building things, creating things, seeing individuals succeed. We've had individuals that have been in our organization from age 13 that don't have high school degrees that are now operating their own restaurants and thriving and
Amazing.
being incredible leaders. So that there's a level of fulfillment in that for me. It's definitely not the for me, it's not the money. It's the outcome of building something and looking back and being proud of what you built. Because like I said, money just solves money problems. And Biggie said it best, more money, more problems. So as you amass more things or more businesses, then everything just amplifies.
Right.
What does a true friend mean to you? What does friendship mean to you?
It's such a good question, especially for us to unpack right here, because we've never had this entire conversation.
I don't think we have.
I got to maintain my composure before I give it to you. The first time I told Khalil that he was my best friend was when I was asking him to be my best man at my wedding. And I remember it was so hard for me to explain to him, so hard for me to explain to you that, you're this thing that I've never called you, but felt my entire life. And, friendship to me was, when I went to Toronto and I basically just did my Rishan thing, which is disappear because I'm an only child and I'm very comfortable in disappearing and being introverted and going to a new system or ecosystem. Khalil was always checking in on me, always trying to get me out to come to things, and you didn't need to do that. And so what that showed me a lot about Khalil was loyalty. It showed me a lot about, what he thought of me as in his life. He made the intention and he had the energy to give to checking in on Rishan. And so what is friendship? What is it to me? It's always being synced. It's investing in each other. It's effortless. It doesn't require very much. It's understanding and compassionate, and it's fun at the end of the day. And you're all of that to me. Leanne is so much of that to me. And Jay, Stefan, Shake, Mike, you guys, and Camille, all of you guys who were at my wedding as my groomsmen. I went through that same exercise with all of you guys. I was crying on every single one of you, telling you that you were my best friends, and it was so hard for me to get out. And so I can honestly not articulate what it is other than a feeling. And what I've learned over time is that some friends come and go throughout your life, reasons, seasons, and lifetimes. And I've learned with you, you're a lifetime, right? There's very few people now in our lives where, you consider these people lifetimes, and you'll do whatever it takes to maintain and invest and nurture and grow those things. And you've been one of my best investments my entire life.
Thank you for the kind words and vulnerability there. It's such an interesting topic, and I think a way for me to describe it is non-transactional.
Love it.
So, in our day-to-day lives, as we operate outside of friendships, most relationships are transactional. I need something from you, you need something from me. With my best friends and with yourself and Ali, I'm not looking for anything. I gain a lot, and I'm not showing up being like, what can I get for Rishan today? What can I get, because there's no keeping score. There's no, I brought you a bottle of wine last time. Where's my bottle of wine this time?
Right.
Or I cooked you 10 dinners. Where's my dinners? Right. And it's just this understanding of supportiveness, sitting through shit together, celebrating the great things together, being able to share things with each other that we can't share with a lot of other people in our lives. So those are some of the powerful moments for me. And there's this rhetoric of comparison is the thief of joy.
Yeah.
And I think we need to reframe that. Envy is the thief of joy. Being jealous will steal your joy. Comparison is positive. When I see you in a very curious mindset, I want to learn how to be more curious. So that comparison for me is a strength. I'm like, I see this. He's a very curious individual. I think some of the highest forms of self is integrity, curiosity, and generosity. And when I see you being curious, I want to absorb that. So my comparison is I'm not as curious as Rishan, but I want to get there.
Yeah.
Or, when Ali is his fun, loving, very generous self with his attitude and his laughter, and I'm like, oh, there's a comparison point there. And I would love to be a bit more like that. It's not a jealousy thing. I'm not jealous of you guys having those traits, but it's a growth opportunity for me.
Love it.
And yeah, that's what I see in friendship. And I love the fact that if we don't talk for a month, which is rare now, but used to be more as we were going separate ways out of school and stuff, is nothing changes. You just pick up where you left off, and that's the effortless piece that you brought up there.
Non-transactional.
And looking up, I look up to my friends.
Yeah, and do you think people are stuck in a place where they have friends where they don't have that? They like
Oh,
that.
for
They're
sure.
their closest friends.
Yeah.
The
Oh,
product
for
of the
sure.
5 people they're
Well,
around, like, it's not that.
I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Justine here, right? Like I get to work day to day with one of my best friends, and the power that comes out of that, like conversations that we can have with no desired outcome,
Yeah.
and just share very, very vulnerably in a workplace setting, it is rare. I should probably pay her an extra couple bucks to be a bit of a therapist, if you will.
Yeah.
But I think we get that out of each other. Like conversations that we have with each other are there's a level of therapy to them.
Absolutely, man.